Did Pete Carroll just tell us that Dylan Parham is being benched? This is something that a lot of people are talking about based off of what Pete Carroll just said in his presser. Carroll was obviously asked about Jackson Powers-Johnson, which makes sense, right? We are at the point where this offense line is truly struggling, and we want answers. And we want to know why our best interior offensive lineman is not playing when our offensive line is struggling as hell, especially on the inside. And Pete Carroll was asked about it pretty much every single game so far this week. I should say every single day so far this week. And he was asked about it again today. And based off of what he said, some people think this means Dylan Parham's the odd man out. So listen into this and we'll talk about this on the other side.
That's a good way to ask it. If you could just ask JPJ. He's playing this game. And then our guys they're both playing.
So there you guys have it, right? Pete Carroll's basically saying that Jackson Powers-Johnson is going to play in this game. He also kind of threw it in there that they both will be playing, talking about Alex Kappa. And some people are saying that, hey, well, you can only have two guards out there if it's Alex Kappa and JPJ. Does that mean Dylan Parham is the odd man out? There's a small chance that could actually end up happening. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think this is more so that Pete Carroll is telling us that those two guys will actually be rotating in with one another. I think this is Pete Carroll saying that, hey, Jackson Powers-Johnson will play, but Alex Kappa will as well, and these guys will just rotate. Maybe it's every other drive or every other quarter. Maybe it's one half versus the other half. Either way, I think it does not guarantee that Dylan Parham's going to be benched. I think the Raiders at this point are pretty certain that Dylan Parham, Colt Miller, Jordan Meredith, and even DJ Glaze to a point are a lot better with those four guys out there, and then we're like 50-50 trying to figure out JPJ and Kappa. Which is kind of wild to me. I'm going to be honest with you guys, man. I actually think having Kappa and JPJ out there together actually gives us a better offensive line than Dylan Parham, Jordan Meredith, and then, either Kappa or JPJ, like swapping those two guys out. I think we're better with literally Kappa and JPJ out there together. So, I don't know. It's just kind of weird to me how the battle's kind of shaping up. Also, we've now had two games of, basically without JPJ. Right, we've had two games where the Raiders have went out there with Kappa, and we've struggled in both of those games. We struggled in pass pro. We struggled to score points. The offense right now is failing the Las Vegas Raiders, and in more details, the run game that's failing the Las Vegas Raiders. And to me, when you think about what's happening out there, it's very clear. The interior offense line is just not getting any push. They're not getting any movement. They're not able to have success, and yet, for some reason, the Raiders still are kind of deciding to keep JPJ out, off the field, right? Because technically they're going to be rotating in. Now, I say they're going to be rotating in because of what Pete Carroll almost kind of slipped up and said. If you guys missed it, listen into this one more time and pay close attention to this.
That's a good way to ask it. If you could just ask JPJ. He's playing this game. And then our guys they're both playing.
So obviously he's saying that, hey, JPJ is playing this game. And then he said, our guys are, right before he stopped. Right? He said, our guys are, and then he stopped, and then he caught himself and said, they will both play. Right? And he kind of just ended it there.
He's playing this game. And then our guys they're both playing.
When he said our guys are, to me, it almost sounded like he was going to say, hey, our guys are going to be switching back and forth, or maybe they're going to be rotating in. That's what I feel like Pete Carroll was trying to say, but he obviously caught himself. Which makes sense, right? You don't want to give the Bears any sort of advantage. But at this point, I'm sure Ben Johnson has watched the tape of this offensive line. I'm sure they know how to attack. The Raiders, right? Their offensive line's not any good. We've seen three teams now, essentially three separate teams take the same approach to the Raiders, right? They're going to simulate pressure, and they know the Raiders are going to struggle to pick it up. Our guys are just too slow when it comes to processing. Dylan Parham's a little slow. Alex Kappa's a little slow. Jordan Meredith. These guys aren't great out there, so I'm sure the opposing teams already know how to attack the Raiders. But does JPJ playing mean Dylan Parham's not right, or JPJ and Alex Kappa? I don't think so, right? But we'll actually see when this game comes up on Sunday. We have a game, right? It's almost kind of overlooked with all like the drama and all the unfortunate things that the Raiders kind of go through. But we have a game, man, and there's an injury report to this game. Michael Mayer for the Raiders is officially out, and I think this sucks, but honestly, I think, although it sucks that Michael Mayer is not playing, I think it's great that Brock Bowers is fully healthy, right? He practiced in full 3 straight days. I shouldn't say he's fully healthy, but he's probably like 95% at this point, which is great because we need Brock Bowers against the Chicago Bears. Truth be told, this is arguably the biggest game that the Raiders have up to this point. You know, when you look at the first 3 games of this season, the Patriots, the Raiders should have probably beat, and we beat them. You look at the Chargers and Commanders, those are 2 teams you probably should not have beat, and we did not beat them. But going into this game against the Bears, this is a game you have to win, right? This is a game you should technically win. The Raiders after this game can be 2-2, but they could also be 1-3. And if you're 1-3, your season might be over, right? So this game's going to be absolutely massive. Having Brock Bowers is going to benefit the Raiders. I also think the Raiders kind of get a little bit of a break. And, you know, this isn't like a quarterback situation, right? Like, yeah, you know, not having Jaden Daniels was obviously big for the Commanders, and we still technically lost. But this is a different type of you know, players essentially being hurt. This impacts both the Bears on the defense and offensive side, and I want to talk about this a little bit. So TJ Edwards is the Bears starting linebacker, at least he was in week 1. And week 2, he ended up getting hurt in week 2 on a play against the Lions. And he has not played since that point. He did not play in the 3rd game against the Cowboys. And he's not playing against the Raiders. And again, this was their starting linebacker. And he's a run-first type of guy as well. So this should benefit the Raiders when it comes to running the football. The big one on the defensive side is going to be Grady Jarrett. He came over from the Falcons. He's also out. I think that's a big one as well. You know, the Bears defense is not a terrible defense. But these injuries do impact. It does impact this team. Kyler Gordon, who's a starting corner, had a limited practice, so he's questionable. He'll probably end up playing, but it could also be like he'll play just a little bit, right? He might be on a pitch count, potentially. Colston Loveland, their rookie tight end, is questionable. Same situation, right? He was limited as well. He's questionable, as is Kyler Gordon. And the thing with Loveland to keep in mind is, although he hasn't had huge numbers, you know, he's gotten better. And the Bears are so much better having 2 tight ends out there versus 1 tight end. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on. But the big one that I think is going to impact the Bears is going to be Darnell Wright. This guy missed 12 snaps last week. They had Theo Benedict, the second-year right tackle, come in. And we'll just get into the matchup at this point. We'll go ahead and just switch focus and kind of get into that a little bit. You know, it's one of those things where for the Raiders, you get a huge break. Right, obviously Edwards and Jarrett are going to help the Raiders be able to run the football, right, a little bit more, which I think is going to be a key part for the Raiders. But not having Darnell Wright also puts this offensive line at a huge disadvantage. We played the Commanders, who were, you know, with a rookie right tackle. We played the Chargers, who were with their backup right tackle. Those 2 situations, you know, Connerly's still a great football player, and he's still their starter at the end of the day. Pipkins has played a lot of snaps over the years. He's still a really good right tackle in the way, you know, he's a backup at the end of the day. He's good for what he is. The Bears are in a different situation now. Their starting right tackle is out. They're now going to a guy who's going to be a 2nd-year player out of the Canadian League, Theo Benedict. And this is going to be the first time this guy's going to play meaningful snaps. This is a situation where you should be able to take advantage of this. Also keep in mind for the Bears, you know, their offensive line has struggled. You know, their left guard, center, right guard are solid, but their left tackle has struggled a lot. And one of the things the Bears did against the Cowboys was they chipped or double teamed, and they helped Braxton Jones as much as they possibly could. And Braxton Jones had a good game statistically, right? He didn't give up any pressures last week. But a big part of that was because the game plan was we're going to help Braxton Jones on every single play, or as much as we possibly can. Well, that only happened because Darnell Wright was just left out there on an island, right? Just one-on-one opportunities in Darnell Wright, and Wright is a good offensive tackle. So you put him in a one-on-one, he's going to win. Well, they don't have him. He's out, right? He has this injury. So now the Bears are kind of in this situation where, yeah, they'll still technically have their starting quarterback, unlike the Commanders. But this is not that type of situation where you still have an elite offensive coordinator, right? The Commanders still have Cliff Kingsbury. He still had success with Marcus Mariota. This is not that type of situation. This is a different situation. The Bears' offensive tackles are weak. This is going to be the weakest offensive tackle group that we have played, right? Given that Theo Benedict hasn't really proven himself. Some people do think he's better than Braxton Jones, right? Some people do think he should have started over Braxton Jones. But this is a situation where the Raiders have to be able to take advantage of this. You have to be able to beat up on the Chicago Bears' revamped offensive line. You have to be able to beat these guys. If you can't have success against the unit that's kind of out there, our season's already basically over, right? Just wrap it up at that point. Because if you cannot beat Theo Bennett, if Maxx Crosby cannot beat this guy consistently and get after the quarterback, if Malcolm Koonce and Tyree Wilson on the left tackle cannot consistently beat this guy, wrap the season up, man. At that point, you're not going to win many more games. You'll be a bottom 5 team. You'll have a top 5 pick. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think the Raiders will be able to take advantage of this, but it's also going to be on the coaching to put these guys in the right decision. You know, the Bears' offensive line might be hurt, but one of the things we have to realize is the Raiders on the defensive side have not made the smartest decisions up to this point. If I asked you guys, do you know why? This is the question I'm going to ask you guys. Do you know why teams are no longer playing base defense as much as they once did? It's because it doesn't work. It's not a good defense to play. Why be big and slow when teams are going to just hit you and beat you with these passing concepts? Teams no longer play base defense because of that. Nickel gives you a little bit more speed. It gives you a little bit more flexibility. So you guys know that. We all know that, right? Nickel's the defense that most teams use. But for some reason, the Raiders still ran the most base defense up to this point. By far. 128 snaps over the first 3 games. 3 games, 128. By my math, that's like 42 and a half snaps in base defense. That's wild to me that the Raiders are coming out in that much base defense, right? That just doesn't make sense to me. I think it's one of those situations where for the Raiders, you have to absolutely come out in a higher count with like when you're out there in a nickel. You have to play more dime if that's what you think is going to allow you to have more success. You know, there was a time when Cameron Richardson was almost supposed to be the starter. There was a time when Darren Porter was almost supposed to be the starter. Let's use these guys. Let's put these guys out there and let's let these guys have success. You know, put 3 or 4 corners out there. And we're going to have to because the Bears are that type of team, right? They are that type of team that's going to come out with multiple wide receivers, right? They'll come out with 3 wide receivers and they'll find success. And the Bears have playmakers, right? Let's not overlook that the Bears have, you know, DJ Moore in himself is a good wide receiver. I think he's a top 20-ish, 25. I think DJ Moore is like as good as Jacoby Myers. It's like how we value Jacoby. I think DJ Moore is like that type of wide receiver, which is a really, really good wide receiver. But Rome Odunze is the man. He is the guy that the Raiders are going to have to focus in on. I think Odunze is a top 5 to 7 wide receiver. He reminds me of A.J. Brown. He was the 9th overall pick or something like that just last year. Right? There's a reason why some people valued him higher than Marvin Harrison Jr. As an example. Odunze is a very good football player, and I'm pretty sure he leads the league in touchdowns for wide receivers right now. And he's had a couple of really nice games, right? You know, I think he's had 100 yards in 2 of the 3 games. And the game he didn't, still had a good game, right? He had like 2 touchdowns that game. Rome Odunze is the guy the Raiders have to really focus in on. But that also, the broader point is they have weapons. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. Luther Burden's another guy that kind of broke out last week. So he's another weapon that this team has. And what's crazy with Burden is he's technically their 4th wide receiver. They have Zacchaeus, who I think was with the Falcons previously. They have him as like their 3rd wide receiver or their quote-unquote slot wide receiver. It's just a matter of time till Luther Burden takes over. He had a touchdown and I think 3 or 4 catches last week, over 100 yards. Burden was the guy that I really wanted the Raiders to take, right? I really wanted the Raiders to take him at pick 38. Instead, we traded with the Patriots. The Patriots took Travion Henderson with pick 38. And then pick 39, the Bears took Luther Burden. And then we obviously got Jack Bech later on. Which I'm still not over, by the way, man. I really wanted this guy. He was considered the number 1 prospect coming out by NGS, which is the official scouting company of the NFL. He was considered the number 1 prospect coming out. So I really, really wanted Luther Burden. Regardless, these are just their wide receivers. That doesn't include Cole Kmet, who's one of the highest paid tight ends. That doesn't include Colston Loveland, who was a top 10 pick this past season. The Bears feel like Loveland is the next potential Brock Bowers. Right? That is how they value this guy. And when the Bears come out with 2 tight ends, they're technically one of the most explosive offenses with 2 tight ends on the field at a time, which is going to benefit the Raiders a little bit because Colston Loveland, he did not participate on Wednesday and Thursday, and he was limited on Friday, and he's questionable going into this game. So if he doesn't play or if he's on a pitch count, that could benefit the Raiders a little bit because at that point, they'll have to go to their 3rd tight end if they want to get into these 2 tight end packages. The Bears have taken the 3rd most snaps with 2 tight ends out there, so that can benefit the Raiders a little bit. Also, the Bears have struggled to run the football, which I think for the Raiders is also, it's kind of favorable, right? So, You know, DeAndre Swift, I think, is a pretty explosive playmaker. You give him the ball out in space, he'll make plays. In between the tackles, he struggles a little bit. And the Bears don't really have those type of running backs right now on this roster that can run in between the tackles. They have a rookie running back who's like their RB2 at this point. Their third running back is Roschon Johnson, who has not had a snap on offense. He's just been a special teams guy. And DeAndre Swift's taking most of the snaps at this point. So they don't really have a whole lot they can do in between the tackles. And a benefit for the Raiders is we play a lot of cover 3 defense, right? So when you're in a cover 3, you're going to stack the box essentially. For the Raiders to win this game, you know, you have backup offense tackles. Our D-line has to get home. I think naturally we'll be able to contain the run as we have, you know, in the last 3 games. We've been pretty solid against the run. Obviously, you had that one run for 60 yards that went for a touchdown against the Commanders. But outside of that, you've been pretty damn solid against the run. Part of that also comes down to the type of defense we're playing. So pressure, run game. You got to be able to shut those 2 things down. You got to get pressure. More than that, man, Caleb Williams is not a great quarterback right now. And you got to take advantage of this. You know, Ben Johnson runs a type of offense that's like, it's schemed up and it requires your quarterback to hit guys in like tight windows and hit them on, you know, like as they're running these Yankee concepts or these double posts or whatever it is. It's for the quarterback to hit these guys. And Caleb Williams has struggled a little bit. He's had some inaccurate moments. He's had moments where he doesn't throw the ball and then he tries creating with his legs. You got to rush contain this guy. You got to make him just throw the football and say, if you're going to beat us, you got to throw it with your arm. We're not going to let you create plays. It's possible this guy can struggle a little bit. I think right now playing man defense against a guy like Caleb Williams is not the best way to have success. In fact, statistically, he completes 71.4% of his passes in man situations, which is the second best quarterback. Against zone, he's third worst, right? 60.8%. So Caleb Williams has a lot less success in man situations. I'm sorry. Caleb Williams has a lot less success in zone situations, a lot more success in man. So again, that's favorable for the Raiders as well. You know, the Raiders have a favorable matchup here. But as favorable as I'm here telling you guys this is for the Raiders, at the end of the day, these guys got to go out there and get it done. Or they got to go out there and actually win this game on the football field. Stats don't win games. You got to go out there and actually just do it. And I'll also say this, when you look at the Raiders on the offensive side, by far the biggest issue right now for the Las Vegas Raiders is their offense. And we can all 100% agree with that, right? This Raiders offense has basically failed us at this point. You look at week 1, you scored enough points to win, but honestly, our defense did such a great job. You should have scored a lot more points. I understand it was a bad weather game, but even in week 3, the Chargers scored 20 points on the Raiders. If you can't beat a team that only scores 20 points, you don't have any business winning games in the NFL. And I understand, it's a new scheme, it's a new system, new quarterback, new O-line, new group of weapons, and I understand you might struggle a little bit scoring because of that, but we're no longer in week 1 or 2, we're now in week 4. This shit has to click, right? You have to be able to get together and you got to be able to have success. And it starts right now for the Raiders, man. The offense has to go out there and put it out there on the field. This game's going to be won and lost by the Raiders offense. Even against the Commanders, I know we had those 2 special teams plays. The defense kind of gave up chunk plays, especially at the end of the game. They started struggling. But we still lost that game because our offense could not score points. It could not sustain drives. We had some 3 and outs. You can't have that stuff happen. Also, it was a short week. The practice situation kind of sucked for the Raiders. That's not going to happen this week, right? This week, the Raiders have had a full set of practices. It's a Sunday game. It's at home, so we're not the ones that are going to be traveling either. This is a winnable game for the Raiders, right? You should be able to win this game. Now, let's talk about it. For the Raiders to win, it's not going to be on Geno Smith 100%. It's going to be on the offensive line to open up lanes for the running back. We've already talked about Jackson Powers-Johnson. He'll be at least playing someone. Maybe it's a rotation. Maybe he starts at left guard. JPJ will be out there, so we should be able to have more success. And the Bears are going to be without Grady Jarrett. They're going to be without TJ Edwards, who's their starting linebacker, starting D tackle. Their linebacker is going to be a combination of Tremaine Edmonds and Noah Sewell. And Sewell's not a great linebacker at this point. He's good, but he's not great. You have to be able to run the football. And then even on the defensive line, these guys are going to have some combination of like Andrew Billings, who was once with the Raiders, Javon Dexter, who I think Dexter is a really good defensive tackle. And then there'll be some combination of like a rookie, Shamar Turner. Don't really know if he'll be good enough. Chris Williams, I believe he was a UDFA. So the Raiders have to be able to have success running the football, right? If you can't run the football and you get into like these 3rd and long situations, Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears, we all know Dennis Allen, right? He was our head coach a couple years back. For the Raiders, you know, if you're not able to run the football and you get into like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10s, and that's where you're consistently at, you're going to lose this game. The Bears have one of the best 3rd and 7 or longer defense in the NFL. They're one of the best defenses. And a part of that is because, you know, one, picking up 7 yards is not easy, right? You got to run routes that are at least 7 yards to pick that stuff up. But, you know, they're longer developing concepts, and you got to be able to, you know, hold up on the offensive line. And these guys have good power-based guys, and they just collapse the pocket. You have Montez Sweat on one side, you have Deo Odingbo on the other. Those are 2 of the highest-paid defensive ends in the NFL. Right, both guys are top 10 in terms of per year money. Right, Javon Dexter's pretty good defense tackle, was a 2nd-round pick just a couple of years ago. So these guys collapse the pocket well. So if you're in a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, the pocket's going to collapse. And then of course we know DJ Glaze struggles. You know, especially against power at times, he struggles to anchor down. We know that on the inside, Jordan Meredith struggles a little bit. We know Dylan Parham struggles a little bit. This is a power-based team, especially on that defensive line, and the Raiders struggle with power. So we need to be in 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, and we got to run the football. And that's it right there. Run the football and have success. And also throw this out there. And if you guys watched my video 2 weeks ago after the Chargers, and I think even more after the Commanders, I kind of talked about this, but you know, if you're in a type of offense, like let's say for example you're in a 2x2 and your offense is consistently struggling, but then let's say you get into like a 3x1, right, where you're getting into like trips, you know, maybe it's just 3 wide receivers or tight end, 2 wide receivers, and it's not necessarily like a bunch package or whatever it is. If you put 3 guys on one side and then bam, you start having success, stick with what allows you to have success. Because the Raiders have struggled to do this. The Raiders are the 17th best offense in a 3x1. When they're in a 2x2, they're the worst offense in the NFL. Do what works, have success, win this football game. And there are just no excuses for this at the end of the day. The Bears are one of the worst defenses covering explosive plays downfield. The Raiders are one of the best offenses in terms of generating explosive plays through the passing game. So, again, this game's not going to be won and lost with Geno Smith in his arm. I'm confident Geno will pick up big, explosive, chunky yards. It's going to be won and lost based off of what this run game does, right? I really do think this run game is going to be a big part of the Raiders having success because run games sustain drives. So if the Raiders are unable to do that, we're going to lose this game. I should just go ahead and just kind of wrap it up and say this, you know, if the Raiders want to have a successful season, it starts right here. This is the biggest game of the season because being 1-3, your season's kind of over at that point. You know, you look at the Saints, for example. The Saints are 0-2, and they're playing the 49ers, I believe, this past week. And there were players for the 49ers that came out and said, hey, the Saints, you could just tell, like, their DBs did not really care to be out there. Right? The Saints, you could tell their players just kind of were, like, not bought in. And a part of not being bought in is when you're getting your ass kicked. No, I'm sorry. I think the game was against the Seahawks, not the 49ers in week 3. They're getting their ass kicked, right? And what they were saying is basically that, hey, the Saints just were not interested. The players were not interested, right? And that was because the Saints were already headed to being 0-3, and they already knew the situation they were kind of in. And I say that because when the Raiders are 1-3, and then you have a game against the Colts coming up, and now you're 1-4, your season's kind of over at that point too. These are the games you have to win. If the Raiders can beat the Bears and they can somehow beat the Colts as well, right? These are winnable games. Like, they're not guaranteed wins, but they're winnable games. 1-4, your season's over. But if you're 3-2, think about how much momentum you'll have kind of going into, you know, into those games kind of coming up, right? Think about the momentum you have before like that Chiefs game. You'll have so much more momentum just kind of going into it. So you got to win this game right here. We'll see what ends up happening, man. Let me know what you guys think. Do you expect the Raiders to win this game? What are some of your guys' predictions? What are some of the matchups you guys are looking forward to? Let me know in the comments below. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another video.